Okay, so today we're going to talk about menopause, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as I possibly can for you. To understand menopause, you first have to understand the regular female menstrual cycle. So let's go through that really quickly. The brain speaks to the ovaries, and it does that via the hypothalamus and a little gland called the pituitary gland. So the brain sends signals to the pituitary gland, which then sends signals to the ovaries. Now, the dominant signal that is sent in the first half of the menstrual cycle is a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. And follicle stimulating hormone does exactly what it sounds like. It stimulates the follicle inside the ovary, which contains the egg, to mature and develop. And when that follicle begins to mature and develop, it becomes the source of estrogen. And so under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone, that follicle matures, it starts to release estrogen. Now, during this first half of the menstrual cycle, from the first day of bleeding to ovulation, there is no progesterone. It's called the follicular phase, named after the development of the follicle. Now, at day 14 or so, we have another hormone that spikes. This hormone is called luteinizing hormone, LH. And that spike of luteinizing hormone causes this follicle to rupture and release the egg. Now, what's left behind when that follicle ruptures is a product called the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum, at that point, begins to secrete progesterone. So in the second half of the cycle, it's more progesterone dominant, whereas in the first half of the cycle, it's more estrogen dominant. The second half of the cycle is called the luteal phase, after the corpus luteum. So this is what the normal menstrual cycle does. Now, as you begin to approach perimenopause, these follicles become less and less, and or they age. They're not as viable as they once were. And so what begins to happen is oftentimes you will be without ovulation. This follicle will not rupture, it will not release an egg, and therefore the corpus luteum is not formed. And so you do not get progesterone. Now here's what's really interesting about this, because estrogen and progesterone both feed back on the hypothalamus. And they do that to regulate the way this whole system works. Well, as soon as progesterone stops showing up, it will dysregulate or cause issues with estrogen as well. So at perimenopause, you have low progesterone, right? But you also have volatile, changeable estrogen. Sometimes it's very high, and sometimes it's low as the hypothalamus tries to figure out what's going on. And this is the hallmark of perimenopause, a very volatile time. Mood changes, hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, cravings, changes in what we call SHMEC, sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings are notorious at perimenopause. Now here's one of the things to know. Progesterone is one of the primary hormones involved in stress management. So is estrogen, but once you lose progesterone, stress starts to become way more dominant. So during perimenopause, one of the first things that you want to begin to do is manage stress. You want to manage stress or reduce cortisol. Now this is tough for many women who want to lose weight because they think they should just eat very little and exercise as much as they can. But during perimenopause, eating a lot less and stressing yourself out with exercise can release an awful lot of cortisol in some people and become a stress in and of itself. And so at perimenopause, one of the biggest shifts that you can make here is, instead of doing an extra hour on the treadmill, you should be doing an extra hour walking. Treadmill running raises cortisol. Walking lowers it. Instead of thinking about going to the gym and doing high intensity exercise classes early in the morning, maybe you want to think about getting an extra hour of sleep. And so what ends up happening is you want to switch into a very stress reducing state. Now that is perimenopause, but what happens at menopause is now you have estrogen and progesterone low. Well, estrogen also helps deal with stress, but it does something else. It helps you manage your insulin. So at menopause, now you've got cortisol and insulin, two hormones that may not have been as deleterious for you or as, troubling before, now become an issue. Now both stress and calories become an issue. Now this is important, calories and carbs, because both carbs and or extra calories can raise insulin. So for a menopausal woman, the same diet that they used to be able to maintain their weight on may start causing them now to gain weight. And that weight will specifically go around the belly because of cortisol and insulin having impact there. So here, we're gonna manage stress further and also decrease calories and particularly carbohydrates, because those are the calories that have the most difficult impact on insulin. And then the third thing here at post-menopause is you tend to, oftentimes, women in this age range will have very low estrogen, very low progesterone. Testosterone will fall as well, but often they are more testosterone dominant because testosterone doesn't fall as much as estrogen or progesterone. And you can use that to your advantage by adding in extra weight training here. And so this is a really nice 1, 2, 3 punch here for menopause because of this hormonal influence. And I'll go through it one more time. If you want to deal with the hormonal influence of menopause, you want to, first of all, really start to manage stress. Thinking about mindset around sleep and naps and walks and meditation and yoga and physical affection and time with pets and social connection and meditation and massage, and all these things become more important than traditional forms of exercise. That is critical to understand. Lots and lots of walking more than lots and lots of training now. Second, you want to really move from a lower calorie diet to a lower carb diet. So in other words, all else being equal, you want to start to reduce your carbohydrate intake, especially lots of sugars and sweets and starches, and really load up on vegetables, quality protein sources, fiber-based sources, but not a whole lot of starchy carbohydrates or simple carbs here. And then 3, also begin to move more towards, when you do work out, more towards weight training versus step classes and things like that. And this 1, 2, 3 punch of stress reduction, carbohydrate management, and ramping up your weight training is the best thing I have found to manage menopause. So hopefully that's helpful for you.